Hello, everyone. I just got back from Napa, where there was a conference that I attended called Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. And they made a lot of the presentations available to us to kind of go over. And I thought the presentations were pretty well put together. And since they have the slides available to us, I thought we would kind of go over the slides and then summarize them for you guys and give you my comments on the things. Most of it is stuff that you probably already know, but some of it might be helpful. And I paid $1,500 to go learn this stuff and listen to it, and you guys will get it for free in a condensed fashion. All right, so the first presentation that's available was this presentation by Dr. Rim of the Harvard School of Public Health, and he was talking about all the different kinds of diets, and is there a diet that's best for everyone? Um, and and basically, he wanted to look at what the problem is, that our diets are so poor, and what kind of problems does that cause, and is there a diet that's best for everyone? All right. So we started off with these. These is the top 10 causes of death in 2018. So heart disease and cancer are number one and number two, and you can see that they're much more than everything else. And he highlighted these orange things that are definitely diet related and these blue things that are a little bit less diet related. So heart disease, cancer, and then respiratory disease. Probably a lot of that is related to smoking and could be some environmental factors, but there may be some dietary components to that as well. Accidents, probably there's no dietary component to it. Stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes. Alzheimer's is actually thought to be a form of glucose intolerance in the brain, much like diabetes is kind of glucose intolerance in the body. And maybe I'll make a video about that in the future. Flu and pneumonia, respiratory illnesses that are infectious, they are probably somewhat diet related because diet affects your immune system, and a poor immune system affects your susceptibility to flu and pneumonia. And then in 2022, if you put COVID into the situation, COVID would be the number 3 cause of death since the pandemic. We're reaching close to 1 million deaths from COVID. So it's getting up there. And if those of you guys who watch this channel, you know that COVID is a diet-related disease. Diet affects comorbidities, and comorbidities affects mortality and morbidity from COVID-19. And so the next slides go over these. These are maps that you can get from the CDC, and they've been mapping obesity trends in the United States since the 1980s, and they're fairly shocking. This is a map from 1985, and you can see here much of the states have no data. So the white ones we don't have any data about, but probably based on what we see here, in most of the states you had less than 10% of the adults were obese, which is a BMI of higher than 30, so less than 10%. And then in the states that were doing a little worse, there was 10 to 14% that were obese. So, I mean, not great. You remember from my Malawi video that the average obesity rate in Malawi is 5%. And so in 1985, we were hovering around under 10% in a lot of states, and then between 10 and 14% in the remainder of the states, which was not great, but not bad. And then by 2005, it looked like this. You can see here, not a single state was under 10%. Not a single state was under 14%. And there were a few states, Colorado and Massachusetts, and I believe this is Vermont. I always get Vermont and New Hampshire confused. And so those 3 states had between 15 and 19% obesity. The remainder here had 20 to 24%. These states had 25%, and West Virginia, Alabama, no, that's Mississippi. West Virginia, Mississippi, and Louisiana were at over 30% obesity. Okay, so that's pretty bad. It gets worse. This is 2019. So in 2019, now we have the best state. So Colorado was the best state at 15 to 19%. Now they're up to 20 to 25% obesity. The yellow is 25 to 30%. This is 30 to 35%, and these dark red are greater than 35% obesity. And then now we know nationwide we're sitting at around 40% obesity nationwide. So this is almost all dark red now. So in the course of about under 40 years, we've gone from this to worse than this, which is shocking. It's one generation. So yeah, he had a funny picture. Here's David. You know, this is what people are supposed to look like. This is what people actually look like. And not only is it in adults, it's in now in kids. And kids are in many states, almost a quarter of them are obese. You know, and kids should just not be obese. It's not a it's purely a dietary thing there. And we're seeing things like diabetes, which was considered an adult disease, showing up in kids now. So it's kind of a bad situation. So what we have here is all these kind of diets, what he calls like fad diets. So there's the gluten-free diet, the wheat belly diet, the detox diet, South Beach diet, paleo diet, wild diet, Whole30 diet. You know, there's just a bunch of diets, and then there's all these documentaries about what the diets are. And, you know, people just are overwhelmed with all the different kinds of things. And then this is a little mockery of Dr. Oz. Most people in academia and most practicing doctors um, kind of see Dr. Oz as a sort of a joke because he makes a bunch of ridiculous claims. All right. So what are these claims? And the problem with all these diets is there's thousands of anecdotal stories. Like, you know, like someone said, oh, it worked for me, it worked for these small group of people. But in order to have real evidence, what you need is large observational data sets. So that means you followed, you know, 10, 20, 30,000 people for decades and see what they ate and see how they do, because you need to follow them up for a long time to see things that really matter, like all-cause mortality, um, cancer rates, stroke rates, heart attack rates. Those things will not show up very well in just a few years. You need to follow them for a long time. And then you can confirm it by doing a randomized trial where you give people different diets and at least follow them for several years. And those studies obviously are very hard to do, and most of these diets don't have that kind of evidence. So we're going to go scroll through all this and look at the major uh, d- diets um, that are popular. So there's a Whole30 diet, and basically this diet it says eat a lot of vegetables, fruits, meats, and eggs, natural fats, seasonings, and seafood. Avoid grains, baked goods, legumes, junk food, dairy, alcohol, sugars. They claim that it transforms one's health, habits, and relationships with food, and eliminates cravings. This and that. Then there's the paleo diet. The paleo diet is a diet that's based on, oh, you know, in the Paleolithic era, before people started farming, when we were hunter-gatherers, what we would have eaten is grass-fed meat, eggs, nuts, seafood, fresh fruit, vegetables, and oils. They avoid grains because grains were not popularized until agriculture came into the picture. Refined vegetable oils like canola oil and things like that. Dairy, because dairy is a farming thing. Potatoes, that's another farming thing. Processed foods, salt, sugar, alcohol, and legumes. So beans, they thought that's also a farming thing. One of the things is like we have no idea what Paleolithic man ate really, and probably it was a lot of bugs. Actually, they probably didn't eat that much meat. They probably ate a lot of bugs and a lot of vegetables and fruits, because that's generally what primates eat now, and that's probably likely what if man were eating like they did in the Paleolithic era, supposedly, since we don't know, but we suspect that it was a lot of bugs. And, you know, their average lifespan was like 30 years. They didn't live long enough to get chronic diseases. They died of infectious diseases and injuries. So there's the low-fat diet, which means basically you just eliminate oils, you eat lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. There's the low-carb diet. This is the Atkins diet, which you eat a lot of fats and meats and then vegetables, but not starchy vegetables, and you don't eat grains. There's intermittent fasting. This is probably something that's popular. That's where you like don't eat for a few days and then eat. The 5-2 diet is you eat for 5 days, and then for 2 days you restrict your diet to 25% of what you actually need. And then there's the time restricted diet where you fast, you don't eat for 16 hours a day and you eat for 8 hours a day. The DASH diet, this is vegetables, fruits, whole grains, fish, poultry, nuts, lean meats, and then you limit red meat, fatty meats, sweets, sugars, sodium. Mediterranean diet is fruits, vegetables, fish, whole grains, olive oil. You limit wine, meat, dairy, poultry. Okay, so what you kind of notice looking at all these diets is that every diet has a lot of fruits and vegetables. That's kind of across the board. There's no diet that says don't eat fruits and vegetables. Everyone eats fruits and vegetables. What they disagree on is like dairy, meats, and grains. Okay. Um, And then, so what works? Basically, the gist of it was that what works is none of these diets work. They all work, well, they kind of all work in the short term. So if you do any of these diets, you will lose weight and your blood markers of health, like cholesterol and blood pressure, those kinds of things, will improve for the couple of like a month or 2 or 3 that you stay on it. But most of these diets, like the Atkins diet, this Atkins diet was very popular several years ago and is still somewhat popular now. It's just no one can stay on this diet. I mean, almost no one can stay on this diet because if you're on an Atkins diet, you can't really eat with other people. You can't eat any carbs. And it's just a diet that people can't stick with. And what basically if you want to bottom line the thing is you can't do a diet. You basically have to decide that you're going to change the way you eat forever from now until death. Because all of these things will work in the short term, but everyone reverts back to whatever they were eating before, and as soon as they revert back to whatever they were eating before, they go back to what they were eating, what they look like, and what their blood markers were at the diet that they were eating before. So you have to pick a diet that tastes good and is something that you're willing to do for the rest of your life. And so he talks about this. You see the usual diet. This is a study in about 50,000 women, and you see over the course of 9 years, when they go on the low-fat diet, they all lose weight for the first year, and then slowly everyone just goes back to their regular diet. And then in the end, after 9 years, there's essentially no difference between the usual diet and that. Um, you can do a healthy low-fat diet or a healthy low-carb diet. That you'll both lose weight. Yeah, they lose an average of 5.3 kilograms or average of 6 kilograms. So either way, people lose weight on average. Uh, Either way. So Mediterranean diet is another popular diet. And an interesting thing that we found out from a different presentation is that when people hear Mediterranean diet, they think that it's Italian food. That is not Italian food. It is based on the diet of people that lived in Crete in the 1960s. And that essentially is almost all leafy greens and vegetables and some fruits, a lot of olive oil, lots of nuts and beans and grains, whole grains, and very little meat. The average amount of meat that they ate was about 30 grams a day. And that it works out to about 1 ounce a day. So no one's going to eat a 1 ounce steak every day. What this means is that they're eating like meat maybe once a week is what the Mediterranean diet is. So all of these, so bottom line, let's just get to the end of this thing. Bottom line, no diet works if people can't stick to it. Most diets work if people can stick to it. And so you just have to pick something that you're willing to do. And then, a lot of it is counseling, a lot of it is having a support group, going through it together. Um, so, what are the diets that work, that have good evidence? They're the DASH diet, the Mediterranean diet, and the vegetarian diet. Um, these diets, the Esselstyn diet, that is the diet that I talked about when reversing atherosclerosis in another video. I will link that below. That one is a very restrictive diet, very hard to follow, but it is highly effective. So it works, but it's not well traveled. Vegan diet, also very restrictive, hard to follow, but it's fairly popular. The Dean Ornish diet is a diet by Dr. Dean Ornish out of UCSF. That's also a very restrictive diet. It's a bit hard to follow, but some people will follow it and has good evidence. So these have good evidence, um, and they're fairly easy to follow. And obviously people can stay on the Mediterranean diet for their whole life because that's what people in Crete did. That was their diet for centuries. Um, and then a vegetarian diet, lots of people do that. And of course, in all of these things, there's like healthy vegan and there's not healthy vegan. Like chips and Coke is vegan, but that's not healthy, obviously. Right. Yeah. So one point he made here is that basically processed food makes people eat more. And then people like to look at all these things and say, oh, chocolate's a superfood, kale's a superfood, raspberries are superfood, blueberries are superfood, beets are superfood. It just, nothing's a superfood. Like all vegetables and fruits are good. That's the one constant in all diets, is that the majority, like all good tested diets, is that the majority of your food should be um, just mostly fruits and vegetables. And then grains and nuts, those are in the well-tested diets, and they are generally thought to be very healthy. So there's no perfect diet. Blood risk biomarkers are improved. Um, many diets show promise in most people. True personalized nutrition is far away because we just don't know which diet. Because some diets are going to work better for other people than others. Like, maybe a vegan diet is good for me, but it may not be good for everyone. Some people may need more. They may need some more animal protein. And then many new diets have little or no long-term evidence. They're just kind of, people are making them up and making stories and writing books, but they just don't, there's no data to support them. The things that we have data about are a healthy vegan diet, a healthy vegetarian diet, the Ornish diet, Esselstyn diet, DASH diet, and Mediterranean diet. Those are the ones that we have good evidence for. We don't have great evidence for the paleo diet or the wheat belly diet or any of those things. The Atkins diet does have quite a bit of research, but that's just the diet that usually most people cannot sustain, and it does have some problems long term in studies with cardiac health and lipid profiles. All right, so there will be 4 videos in this series, and they'll be coming out kind of daily or every other day.